Fishes!
Welcome, Richard Starkey or Derek Ashtray. I'm always confused about those that you have two names. It's like the Clark Kent and Superman. So where does that come from? Is that like your private life and your career?
It kind of is. Like, it started as a bit of a joke. What happened is I was working on a film quite a few years ago with an American director who was very... there was a lot of bad blood on the film, and there were lots of politics between the director and the producer, and he kept kind of, like threatening to call DGA lawyers and that kind of thing. Okay. And at some point I realized that I had said in a very innocuous Facebook post with my real name, I said, it's a great week, I'm planning to picture lock this week, and then do all, and I'm going to go and play squash, I'm planning to win that game, and then I'm going to do this, a very innocent post. And no one, and it was on an editors only group, and nobody else I didn't tell somebody we had picture locked. I just said I was planning to.
Yeah. And
suddenly again this threat came up, and it was like, from the director to the producer, like, my sources have told me that you've locked picture without consulting me, and you expect a letter from my lawyers and stuff like that. So basically, I closed my Facebook account, let it go dormant. I mean, there was nothing that bad in there, but I was like, just to be safe, I didn't really want to cause trouble. And I had, I thought, well, maybe I had said something else. Yeah. And when I started a new Facebook account, I decided to anagram my name. Okay. So Derek Ashtray is the same letters as Richard Starkey. Yeah. And I took all the letters and I scrambled them, and I was like racking my brains, and I had a couple of other options, but the one that finally, when I realized you could make the word ashtray and the name Derek spelt Derick, yeah. I was like, well, who wouldn't want to be Derek Ashtray? So, but now it's kind of like a bit of a social thing. Like, I've got friends who actually call me Derek. Like, they know my name's Richard.
I'll be honest, sometimes I'm confused. I'll say, hey, dude.
Yeah, exactly. No, people call me Derek, and now the joke is a little bit like, hey, Richard, are you going to this party? And I'm like, no, but Derek is. Yeah. It's like, I'm Derek when I'm out. So Derek is like my. It is
I want to know what it says on your passport. That's all I want to know.
That's Richard Starkey, which is Ringo Starr's real name, by the way. So you obviously from Northern England. Yeah. So Ringo Starr's real name is Richard Starkey. Yeah. And so my mom denies the fact that I was named after him, but I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. You had the surname. Like, it's a bit of a coincidence, right?
Cool. And then, so you've obviously edited a lot of TV series, a lot of movies. You worked on Tally's Wedding, and then I know you were also working on The Fix. I had like a little small part in that film, but I don't think that's out yet. But so I mean, over the years. What do you prefer? Do you prefer TV series or film, or?
I kind of, I do sort of, I'm one of those people who I like a bit of everything. To be honest, like, I like new challenges, and I like learning new things, and I like sort of challenging myself. Probably the thing that makes me feel most important is cutting a film, because then there's one editor, and I'm in direct contact with the exec producer, the DOP, the director, the script supervisor. Like, it all comes from me. There's no water to be muddied, really. Yeah. On a TV series, even if I'm the selected as the lead editor, or in something I worked on recently, I was at the title of supervising editor, where I was having to make sure all the other editors' episodes kind of adhered to a style to keep it consistent throughout the show.
How do you do that? How do you? What's that progress like of trying to keep that feel?
That was I won't lie, that was really difficult, and it was difficult from multiple perspectives. It was difficult from just knowing how to do that. But I think the thing I struggled most with was finding that line of like when to change something and when not to. So. Ultimately, it wasn't my choice. I mean, ultimately, I would get an episode from, I don't want to get into too much the nuts and bolts of it, but it's quite hard to decide, like, okay, I would change this thing like this, so therefore I should, or this editor's style is a little bit more like that. Let's leave that so we can keep that style intact, but we need to change only these things to get it into the style of the show. So it's kind of finding that level where you should interfere or you shouldn't, and where you should get involved creatively. So it's a kind of a new thing. I haven't done it very many times in that capacity. I've done it on another international show, or Nigerian show, where I sort of went on quite near the end and did a similar thing. And in that case, I did a pass on every episode, and that was really rewarding, because the editors had all been doing stuff a little differently to each other, and really when I came on, I kind of helped them get some consistency and taught them all things. And
it's a big thing. It's a big thing, and that's why I think editing is always, it can make or break a project.
Yeah, more than a lot of people know. Yeah, really, honestly, totally. I think that they,
I mean, you can shoot all this footage, you can give it to this guy, and he can edit it, and then you can give him the same footage to another guy, and you're going to have two different videos, and two different styles. And it always amazes me that you could have that same footage, give it to one editor and be like, it's just not good. And then you can give it to another editor and be like, this video is brilliant. So going from brilliant to, it's all right. And I mean, it's amazing how, how different, edit can do justice for the story and film and characters and everything.
But it's such small things as well. Like what I learned, working with other editors and trying to give them the kind of creative guidance, and like even considering the fact that I'm an editor and I thought I could speak in editor language that they would understand, I still found it really, and not just me, I'm sure they found it equally frustrating at times. Because I'd say, could we do this? And then it would sort of come out differently to what I was kind of asking, So I think, I can imagine being a director or a producer and sitting with an editor for days on end in an edit room, going, please, can we have it like this? What if we did more of that? And every little command, can we have a few frames more on that shot? Or is there a way to put more tension here?
So what are you saying? Do you think it's that communication or those words that you use that they don't fully get?
It's hard.
With a DP and a director, talking, or like an actor and a director talking, where
there's always going to be that slight mismatch in communication of what one person uses as a term isn't the way the other person understands it. And I think that's where on a film or a TV series, you can't, as a director or producer, sit with an editor and are we allowed to swear on this? You can't frame fuck. Okay, you can, but you don't have enough time. No one's really got enough time. What us editors like the word pixel nudges or frame fuckers. Okay, those are the people that tell you every frame. One more frame on the shot. In commercials, you do that. Can you make this 1 dB louder and put that sound effect 1 frame? Whatever. So, but on something longer, you can't do that. So you have to go, okay, can we get more pace, and then leave the editor to do that, right?
Yeah, and it's always that thing where you can tighten something up, or you can. Or some people don't leave that space for that moment. That moment where you just hold. Or sometimes it's when you cut off all the fat. It can always be, just sometimes you watch a scene. You can have a final cut in the movie and you're like, fuck, it's too long. And then before you start cutting that, you can always cut the guy walks into the room and he sits down and he fixes his tie or something like that. Sometimes it's bam, we can start right in there instead of seeing the guy, get into the car or sit down at the table, walk through the, sometimes we get it. He's in a fucking restaurant. We don't need to know all that information. But it always surprises me how sometimes, an editor can have, somebody can overshoot and then give it to an editor. And then it's always interesting to me, you as an editor, do you look at that and go, okay, I've got 20 fucking shots here, but really I just need 2, but now does the guy want me to use 20 because he shot 20 and it probably took him all day to use,
Yeah, there are quite a few things that I wanted to say and answer. Why editing for me is so interesting is okay, I started cutting in 1996, so it's a while, but I'm still learning. Okay, really I am, and
which is good.
One of the things I've learned recently, I've always thought I'm very good at trimming the fat, as you
Yeah.
say. Okay, so I'll there'll be a dialogue and a conversation. I'm very good at cutting away to the right thing, somebody else nodding, and then I can take out some time and shave some frames and like take out pauses. I'm very good at that.
Yeah.
What I've learned almost recently, like your example of somebody walking into a restaurant, sitting down, like you can take that out, okay, but I've seen editors, since I've started doing supervising editing stuff, I've seen editors who do that, and then I'm like, yeah, but now you're ending up with a like scene of two talking heads, people sitting in a restaurant.
Yeah. Oh, it depends on the feel,
Yeah.
obviously, on
Yeah,
what
exactly.
it is.
So sometimes I'm like, no, that is the instinct, and a good editor will like take that out, and then a great editor will find a way to keep that in, and then trim the rest, because actually at least then you've got some action and you've got some physical action and some blocking to avoid it looking like
it could be the tone.
sitcom.
You could, the scene before could have been this hectic thing where you just need that pace,
And the other thing I've learned probably in like recently, and maybe other editors have always known this, and I didn't, but I mean, I also have, and I see a lot of editors doing things that I go, oh yeah, I used to edit like that. So, maybe it is a progress thing, but that feeling of using all the shots, and I'm quite comfortable now just going like, I'm going to find like every pass, I'm like, cool, they're happy. I'm just going to see if I can just take out one. I try and take out cuts. So I just want to take out one. Where does the dialogue work in its natural rhythm, so I don't have to cut backwards and forwards, and forward.
Yeah.
So, and suddenly just one or two of those in a scene where I can just hold on to somebody, I can hold on to your face, and I can hear my 2-3 lines of dialogue and back, is suddenly changes it, because otherwise you just end up with TikTok editing, like it's and you're back in soapy land,
This is why I think, like, on some of the like overseas TV series, you'll get the name and then you'll get the South African actor. So the South African actor might have like a shitload of dialogue, and then, which is a great piece for showreel, but then they're on the main guy. They're on the main guy who's not speaking. So, the other actors, he's delivering all these lines, but it's on the main guy just listening, going, and all his emotions and all that, and he's listening, and you think, it's funny how, screen time and sometimes they do favor those, those stars instead of a co-star or a supporting star.
Well, also, of course, that part of the why we edit and why films are engaging is like, often you will by cutting to that other person's reaction is like showing you kind of, it's helping you know what to feel, So cutting to it actually sometimes is stronger, like, that, and I'm not one of those people who studied film in university, so I can't remember his name, but that Russian filmmaker who kind of put a man's face, and then a shot of a kitten, and then the same exact man's face, and then a shot of a beautiful woman, and then the same exact man's face, exactly the same take, same shot, and then a third thing. And when you look at this like experiment, I don't even know when it was done, like, but I haven't seen a video of it. And when you look at this, it does actually, you do get a different reaction each time, depending on what you think he's been looking at, I think they started with the kitten, then his face, and then the beautiful woman, then his face, and then the whatever, and then his face.
Yeah. But like always, like, with the editor, you're telling us, you're enhancing the story. You're also telling the story. And I think a lot of people sometimes forget that, or directors, forget that. Obviously there's so many parts of storytelling within filmmaking, whether it's, you start writing the script, then, you start, you're on set and you're busy shooting and you're directing, and then in post, you need to also make all that come across. And if anything, enhance those performances and, getting those right bits.
Well, exactly, and the other thing I wanted to say about when I sort of 2 things ago you said something, and I also was like, I must mention this, is that that thing of like trimming the rhythm and getting the rhythm right. So it is, a lot of it is about rhythm, but like then it's it still is very key to be like, which points do you enhance and how? Like that's the thing, and that's the art of editing for me, and I think. You can watch a cut and you can be like, hey, that's fine. It works. It does what the script says. Like he walked into the restaurant, he sat down, he did those things, he said the right things. She looked upset. There you are. There's the scene. It works, And sometimes that is enough, and sometimes that's all you want. But there are times when you like, what can we get? Can we get something more out of it? And sort of creating a rhythm and then breaking that rhythm for like the one key moment where he delivers the really bad news to her, for example, could suddenly give you like a lot more feels, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, my job, I feel, especially lately in the last, say, 10 years as an editor is obviously make people feel whatever it is that we're going for. If it's intrigue, if it's curiosity, if it's wanting to know who the murderer is, if it's funny, if it's like love, if it's sexy, whatever, danger, but also keep the eyes on the screen. That's the thing. So if you can do that, like that thing I mentioned where I would pause for the bad news.
Yeah.
Is a kind of thing where I see it like this. I see it as a case of like if someone's busy doing like this with their phone and they're busy watching TV and they're getting accustomed to a rhythm, they're watching their phone and watching TV. Suddenly something will change and they'll sense it. And then that's what I want. I want them to sense, hold on, something's going on. What's going on? And then they look up, you know. Yeah. So I think that's one of the tricks is keep the eyeballs on the screen as long as possible. You know, we don't, the olden days of cinema having a captive audience, you could do almost whatever you wanted for the first 6 minutes of it.
Even editing throughout the years, it's changed a lot. You know, when you look at that MTV generation, you know, from fast, from when they started doing music videos and everything's become a lot faster. You know, when you look at some of these action movies now, you know, I think South Park or Family Guy, you know, I think they took the piss out of it when it's like, who's shooting at who, or who's fighting who? Because it's like these quick edits, or these Michael Bay films, and you're just looking and you're going, who's fighting who?
Oh, films are really fast these days. That's what you were saying.
So I think over the year, like when you look at a lot of 70s movies compared to 80s movies, very different. You know,
so different. I mean, I've got like teenagers, 18 and 17 now. And we watched a few years ago when they were younger. We watched the Steve Martin Pink Panther. Yeah. And we were like, I was like, oh, it's pretty funny, man. It's like it's maybe not quite as good as the originals. Like the Peter Sellers was amazing. So a couple of years later, I sort of came across the original Pink Panther. I was like, okay, children, you got to watch this. This is going to be like really great.
They didn't like it, did they?
It was so flat. Like even Andrea, my wife, and I were sitting there and we were like, but there's like one joke every like 3-4 minutes, you know. Whereas like in the Steve Martin one, there's like one joke every 45 seconds. Like there's jokes. There's there's physical jokes, physical comedy, the timing.
But that's also comedy. Comedy's changed a hell of a lot.
All of it has
throughout the years. Like if you're looking at the 50s and 60s with like Jerry Lewis and stuff, and then you look at the 80s National Lampoons and stuff like that, and then in the 90s you got that American Pie, and the 2000s you've got that stoner comedy. It's just changed throughout the years, and I think it's hard to make the audience laugh. You know what I mean? If you think back to like Austin Powers or like The Mask or stuff like this. I remember as a kid, I used to love it, and I watch it now, and I'm like, this is fucking terrible.
But I also think, like for me, I love like one thing that happens to me when I'm working on something scary, like a thriller-y thing, or like a bit of a horror, or like something with a murder. The scarier scenes, like after a few viewings, are the ones that I laugh the most in. Okay, so like I don't know why, like those are the ones I find funniest. So I kind of find the and I do love working on comedies as well, but like, well, that's a separate conversation. But the kind of thrillery things and the laughter is like you realize like a lot of those American thriller horror things that are so well done, they are in a way actually like spoofs. They're kind of actually comedies,
Well, but this is like with Fry Barry, you know. So when I made Fry Barry, yes, it has elements of sci-fi, elements of horror, but there's a ton.
I didn't know it was a comedy. Like I remember watching it, and then I was like, after a while I was like, this is fucking funny, man. I was like, I didn't think it was supposed to be, and then after a while I was like, wow, okay, this is hilarious. And I think that the thing I was going to say is that like permission to laugh, like once the audience gets that permission in their mind, oh, it's actually funny. Then you can do like a lot of different things,
And that's why I would say it's for certain types of comedy and dark humor, I always say it's that personality and sense of humor. It's not for everybody, but when you get it, you laugh.
Exactly. Yeah. No, and there's like obviously like dark comedy that's very different to kind of your standard, I was going to say about cutting comedy though, like the real interesting thing there is the kind of like going with your gut versus looking at takes multiple times. You know, like on most things, you look at multiple takes, and you look at them multiple times. You look at them over and over and over again. You kind of finally settle on one, or you choose one for your first assembly, and then when you come back, work with the director and producer, and it's your fine cuts with the station, with Netflix, Amazon, whoever. You're constantly double checking, refining. They're like, there's something bothering us, and you look and let's just double check the takes, right? The thing with comedy is like sometimes you got to just go with your gut. That gut is really important. Like that's something that I think a lot of editors who work in comedy will tell you. Like they will remember which one of those they liked first.
Yeah.
You know,
and it's that punchline. It's like a comedy actor. It's timing. It's all about that timing.
The timing,
Same with the editing, cutting at that right moment. Yeah. And I worked on I think I mentioned it in the other podcast. I worked with Sacha Baron Cohen on this one film, and we had
the one with the football match.
Grimsby Brothers. So you have the one take. You have the A script, and then you have the certain jokes, and then you have the B line script, which is a different gag. So you film that, and then you have the improv. So the important thing about the improv, which a lot of comedy people love, is that they try lots of different things, but then they also have to shoot the continuity for it. If whatever happens, I might walk off or this, and then or something funny happens in that moment. So it's that continuity where the next scene you might not be in it because of what I just did now.
Exactly, yeah. I think that is the one thing with ad lib where you have to be quite careful. Obviously, I learned that in a way, like Ryan Kruger from Tully's Wedding Diary, Tully's Baby Diary.
He's great. He's a really nice guy as well.
And he's really good with ad lib. Like he's actually like it's quite something to behold, because what he'll do is we'll do the scene, or they'll do the scene kind of as scripted, and then he's kind of like he does sort of seem to allow a little bit of time for ad lib, and then he'll go back and revisit a moment, and literally like he'll be thinking of lines as they go, like the actor might be thinking of lines, and he might suddenly just say, okay, say it's like really like, I don't know, breaking my balls or whatever. He'll just come up, and he comes up with some really, really good lines.
I'm very much like that. When I always like being on set and still having that organic feel where you have that script, but at the same time you're like, you need, we got to put this there, or we just got to throw in this line, and it's. And when you do it, or when it's the improv, where you just know it works, because you're in that groove and that feel at the time, where with the reactions of what people, with the actors and the characters, I think it allows us that space to go, okay, I think let's try this and let's try that, or throw this line in, and I think you should be able to do that, because a lot of films like. This is the script, stick to the script, stick to the dialogue, word for word. I always feel that as an actor as well, myself as an actor, I always feel that you should be open for that improv and being in that moment, and then feeling it out.
Look, obviously within limits, like, as you say.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And often there's such enormous kind of continuity consequences and whatever, But yeah, I think, there are people who do that really, really well. I really enjoy working with Ari for that, because he knows that I'm also I'm quite a fast editor. He says I'm the fastest editor in the world, but I put a debate. So I spend a lot of time organizing my material before I work with the director or producer, right? So that when they sit with me, the last thing somebody wants to watch is an editor scratching around trying to find a shot. So it's like I'll know where that dialogue is, I'll know where those lines are. Exactly. It will be very organized. I can find things, and I'll find the outtakes quite quickly, and then find the ad lib. I was going to tell you though, there's one show that I worked on, which was Outlander, quite a few years ago. Yeah. They shot half of one of the seasons here in Cape Town, and one of the big main actors. So obviously on Outlander, not obviously, but what they do there is they have directors who come in to do a few episodes on a season. So they kind of do a block. They don't get involved afterwards. The show's been running on its own for quite a while. They really go. They get to do a director's cut, and then they hand over to the showrunner in LA, Ronald D. Moore, and they do their cuts and they go thanks and they do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
So anyway, obviously one of these directors had directed one of the very experienced actors to go over there in the background and walk over there and talk to her. So he's like a very experienced actor and knows like he's not comfortable doing ad-lib dialogue. So he doesn't want to say anything that's usable, but of course the mic is on.
Yeah.
So because he's had dialogue.
Yeah.
So he walks over to her and he goes, "Hey, Marcelly, you're doing a great job of carrying that fucking bucket." And she goes, "Oh, fuck, I am." And I just love that. Like every take, he just walks along and goes, "You're doing a great job of carrying the fucking bucket," in that like thick Scottish accent. And she totally, in first take, immediately, she knew exactly what he was doing. She was like, "Make sure we don't give them any dialogue that they can accidentally use. Like, this is not a scripted dialogue. We're not doing it, you know?" And I love that. I thought it was classic.
Did they keep it? Was it?
No, of course they couldn't. No. That was the thing. They were making sure that that it had to just be indiscernible mumbles. They couldn't use anything, because if he had kind of said, "Should we go up there and like fix the fort," or I don't know, "Should we go and find?" Like he's like, "I'm not writing dialogue for you. I'm not, you know, an experienced actor's like that's."
But that's why I said earlier before we started. I mean, you'll be surprised how many people. How many actors don't like improv? They want the lines, they want to be told what to do, they want to be directed, and that's why, you know, when it comes to like self tapes or being in the room, I rather personally do the self tape so I can get it perfect, exactly how I want it, and send it in instead of worrying and stressing about. Yeah. Obviously, it's good to be in the room, but you know, I prefer. You know, because a lot of the time, you know, as an actor, they give us all these lines, and I'm also dyslexic, and they'll go, right, tomorrow at 2 p.m. And I'm like, how the fuck am I going to learn all this? Yeah. You know, so I really need to be in my zone and do it myself, and then get it in, and then hopefully get a call back, and then I'm probably gonna have to go in the room, you know.
But I've seen the opposite of that, where directors have said to me like, they're like, "I don't understand, like this actor was really amazing in their audition, and then, you know, on the day of the shoot they weren't." And I'm like, "Yeah, on the day of the shoot you had like, you know, 200 extras, you had a helicopter, you had like tanks, armored cars, blah 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 blah, and this whole like little military thing marching behind this person." And you know, a hugely expensive film crew, camera, lights, all this stuff. Like there was a lot of attention on them. So suddenly they realized, I've seen it, where somebody realizes, oh, this is actually quite a big, like a big important film, you know, and they suddenly can't perform. You know?
I feel that sometimes where it's, you know, you might have just got that lucky take, you know, lucky audition. So I mean, like, I've seen it more in like commercials, where I've got a call back and there's like 5 of us sitting there, and I can't help, you know, where my director's hat going, all right, I would pick him. They look the part. I don't know why he's here. I don't know why I'm here. You know, and then you know, and they look the part, but you know, whether they had their first audition and they nailed it, and then the second audition they just forgot what they did or what, you know, what they liked from it, and you know, maybe it was by fluke that whatever they did the first time they couldn't reapproach it the second time. And
I've seen that with experienced actors as well, with this like, you know, like we have quite as editors, like we've most experienced editors have had that sort of kind of run in, or not quite run in, but like this sort of like, please don't talk directly to the actors, or those kind of moments, or like example
to you,
like during the shoot. Like actors are so filled with like their own whatever it is that you know, they
don't
like
look them in the eye.
Doubts or you know, are my performances okay or whatever. So like a little harmless thing of like, well, you know, there were a lot of pauses, so I had to do a lot of like trimming, and that can actually like ruin it for an actor. Now they're distracted, so you just, as editors, you kind of, after a while you realize, don't talk directly to the actors, but don't say anything about their performance. It's like, great, you just say it's great. It's like, you don't ever say anything else.
Even when it's not, just say it.
The director must talk to the actors, and you mustn't. I mean, one example is we did like kind of halfway through a film, let's do a little kind of fun video. We're going to have a little mini party, not a rap party, but a halfway party. And there was an actor who was a very, very famous model actually, but then he was acting in this film, and he was being very slapstick and loud and over the top and camp, and he had fallen off this exercise ball off the stage, and the whole crew thought it was hilarious. Like the crew thought everything was so funny. And the producer said to me, listen, man, this guy keeps getting encouraged by the crew laughing. So he thinks it's funny. So this is how we go. So we're trying not to get him to be slapstick. So you can't put in these moments into the video because everyone's going to piss themselves laughing and he's going to carry on doing that. So we're trying to gently steer him away from slapstick, So it's those sort of things of, I love to meet the actors. Like at the rap party on a film, I like to meet them at the rap party. Like maybe once at the beginning and then once at the rap party. I don't like to,
Yeah, talking about actors, it's always funny when you hear those stories. And I've heard quite a few stories about like Steven Seagal or like Van Damme, where they've been like coked up or whatever, and they're like, the AD or the director would say to people, like other actors or crew, like you can't look them in the eyes. You're not allowed to look them in the eyes, and I always think it must be so fucking weird, like being on set with some of these people that you either admire, but they're just like
don't make eye contact.
Just don't make eye contact. It's so stupid, I get the diva thing or whatever, or the in character or whatever, but when it comes to something like you can't look at Van Damme in the eyes, he'll freak out or he'll go nuts or whatever. It's crazy.
I don't have that. Luckily, I can look them in the eyes, and I have to look them in the eyes. Yeah, exactly. Now I have a funny one of the funny things that does happen to me about meeting actors at a rap party or whatever is by the time you've kind of been doing a 6-week shoot or whatever, and there's a lead actor that you've seen like a lot of, like you've seen them, you don't really know them because you see a little bit of before the camera rolls, and once the camera's cut, you get to see them a bit, but you're not
feel
seeing
like
them.
you know them in a sense.
You really feel like you know them, really, really.
And they're like,
and then you go to the rap party, and exactly. So I always introduce myself, and I'm like, hey, hi, I'm Richard, I'm the editor, and I've had reactions like, okay, well, that's nice. Like literally like, and I'm like, okay. To like, one particular person who, this Irish lead actress, and she was like, and I can't remember the character name, but she's like, Helen, we'll call her Helen. She's like, Helen isn't actually a weak character. You know this, right? And I'm like, yeah, I know. She makes some mistakes and she does these things, but she's not a weak character. Like, it's really important that she comes across. I'm like, I know, like, I've read the script. Like, I started getting this, like, lecture from her. And then when I said that, look, actually the final decisions aren't really mine. Like, it's actually the director who chooses which takes go in. Ultimately, it's the director's choice. Then I got another, like, 10 minutes of, like, lecture from this lady, and I was like, okay, cool, sorry I asked. But then others are like, really, thank you so much. I've had like Jeremy Crutchley came up to me one day after a film premiere and like went like, thank you so much, I was really out on a limb, I didn't know how it was going to fit together, and like actually it was a consistent escalating arc, and you've done amazingly well to portray it. That was like probably one of the highlights of my career, is having an actor tell me that, like, and a very well-known esteemed actor, who's really good. So it is rewarding when you get that from the actors.
Of course. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, I think in the film industry, people really appreciate. Well, no, I do. I really appreciate every single HOD or the whole crew that comes to the party and brings what you see on the screen. But it's like normal people that just love film and they don't know what goes into it. It's just, you know what I mean? It's just like, oh, he's the editor. So what does the editor do? And I said, well, he does this and this and that. You know what I mean? So it's like you have those people that they have no idea how everything gets put together. And this is why I always say, like, somebody could walk out of a building and have a little fight and then walk off. And like, there's so much time that goes into that in so many different areas, and it's always amazing to see, or people or family that I've spoke to, and when I tell them, we had to do this, or it was like 16 takes, or we had to do this, the people don't know the time and energy that goes into a lot of stuff what you see on the screen.
No, you're right. I mean, the time is, and what you were talking about earlier is like from conceiving of an idea to writing the script and multiple rewrites and getting it out to people and getting reviews and feedback and rewrites to finally getting a kind of shooting script, and then even that gets modified as you go, and you're shooting that, and then you're going to post, and even that, like from a post-production editor's point of view, I've spent 10 months once on one film.
Yeah.
Like, that's not including the grade and everything. That was like kind of 10 months on an edit of one film.
Yeah.
And, at the end of it, you sit down and you have your final screening, and you like, that 90-minute film is like literally like more than half. I think maybe it was 9 months, but it was long.
Yeah.
And like,
It's a lot of time.
Just on that, like all my time, they've paid me quite a lot of money to do that, because I've had to like live and support myself and buy food and pay my bond and stuff. And you kind of go like, well, it would be a very easy thing to recreate. Like, okay, well, here's the thing, fine. Okay, here's the takes, recreate it. But to get to that locked cut, which is kind of meeting everybody's requirements, from the broadcaster to the director to the producer and whatever, is a real, it takes time, I suppose,
Like, so you've got kids, right?
Yeah.
So what do they think, or do they understand like what you do? And
They do. My children have both said they won't become editors, because my wife's also an editor.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think you knew that, no?
Yeah, so she used to do more documentary kind
So you
of
guys are
work.
competing
Well,
the whole
actually,
time.
we've been for one or two interviews where we've been up for the same position.
Okay. Who won?
Me, in one case.
We'll have to interview her next time.
Yeah, you'll have to
see
interview
her
her.
side of the story.
Yeah, exactly. No, so she used to work in more documentaries and like reality stuff. When the children were younger, she could get stuff and do a lot at home, so it was kind of much easier for us to juggle with younger children.
Yeah.
But now she's moved into drama. She worked on Blood and Water, the first season, and she worked on an American cheerleader film a few years ago, where she was assembly editor when I was the editor. They decided they needed an assembly editor and brought her on. And then she just worked on a show called Spinners that's coming on DSTV quite soon.
Okay.
That's I think sounds. I haven't seen anything, but it sounds like it's going to be like really interesting, like gritty Cape Town gang-ish stories featuring the car. These cars that spin. Like there's this kind of sports.
Okay. Yeah.
So she's doing quite a lot of drama now, and our children are a bit like, no, we hear you guys complain about work, we don't want to do that. It sounds to cause you too much grief. We're like, but we love it. No, they're like, no.
I read on your IMDb trivia that you actually studied to be what is it, science and maths teacher?
Yeah, that's what I started as. Well, I didn't ever get there, but I kind of finished school. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I went to university because my parents couldn't really afford to send me to university, so I got applied for bursaries, and one of the ones I got was from the Transvaal, as it was, education department, and you could do your degree and then work for 4 years as a teacher to repay it. So study for 4 years, work for 4 years. And I was like, well, I'll do it. And then what will I do? I'll do the subjects I'm good at, which was maths and physics. Those were the ones I kind of had natural talent for. Yeah. But the funny thing is, actually, when I did commercials, I would... because you and I haven't actually worked together, so I guess you haven't seen how I organize things. But people who know me, and they, after a few years, I'm in this creative field, and we're working on ads, which are very creative, actually, with a lot of very, very clever creative people. Yeah. And you learn a lot. And then suddenly somebody I've worked with a lot would discover, oh, you started studying a BSc, majoring in maths and physics. And they're like, oh, it makes so much sense now. And it's always like, what? Like that I'm actually really a nerd. Like I'm actually an imposter. This creative thing is an imposter. I'm actually like a chess, Sudoku, Scrabble.
Could have had that alternative universe with you as the maths and science teacher.
But it is like my mom was a total hippie, so there was a real creative side, and my dad is basically like company secretary, data processing manager in the olden days. Like real sort of money, numbers guy. So I guess I got in some ways the. I mean,
what films did you grow up on? What films made you want to do editing?
Okay, so here's where I know a lot of people don't agree with me. There's a lot of stuff that I don't watch. It's not my thing at all. Yeah. For example, I don't watch. I'll tell you what I don't watch is I don't watch superhero movies, like almost any of them. Yeah. in the what I kind of always liked as a kid, if you in the old days when the video stores or the DVD stores had your different sections, right? So my section was the drama section. That's where I would always go to.
Yeah.
So I like my nephew asked me one day, why do you always watch these like boring art films? And I'm like, well, they're the ones that interest me. They've got like human engagement and human, kind of they I guess they explore the human condition and the kind of mental, like emotional side of filmmaking. Yeah. So I would say it's those that have like influenced me a lot, like performances.
But any like titles in particular, like of, just something that you watch when you were like, fuck, that is a movie to me. I really love this. Whether it's like westerns or whatever, just a film that you watch that always stuck with you, or a classic that you'll go back and watch again.
I think what I think I like things that surprised me as well more than anything. So I'm trying to think back to when I was like young. I mean, if I had to say like one film that I remember just like going in and watching and like blew me away totally was Fight Club, but that was like much later. I was already kind of working in film and TV then, but the style of that like absolutely like blew me away in terms of you could do this commercial kind of aesthetic in a film and
that was
have
awesome.
it still
I remember coming out of that cinema watching that film and just like, I need to watch that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight away, I mean, I need to watch that again.
Like really. And then obviously like, some of the really, really, but also since I've been in film, some of the hugely like impressive films for me have been things like Saving Private Ryan. I remember, like, even though it's quite a commercial film, I just remember going like that action scene at the beginning and the emotion, like really like those like directors like that, like he knows how to make me actually cry in the cinema.
Well,
like
you knew that
scene
at the beginning on the beach, you knew straight away, I've never seen this before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was like, it was so fresh and how they, how they shot it with the shutter speed and everything. It was just like straight away you were like, oh, this is, and then it's shot incredibly.
Then if I think back to like a little bit maybe before that, probably before I was in editing or in the industry, things like one of my favorite films for a while was probably Shortcuts. Those kind of human Robert Altman, like Altman type things, like 2.5, 3 hours long. There was the other one which started with all those coincidences and had the like flying, the raining frogs or something. Also with Julianne Moore in it, who's like probably my favorite actress. Magnolia. Yeah.
Great.
So things like that, which aren't often big actiony things, like those are probably the kind of films.
Great really characters and all those.
Character for me is where I think what intrigues me probably the most. As a kid, I can't really remember. Like, I know I saw The Karate Kid a few times, the original with Ralph Macchio. Yeah. And I know also that one school holiday, there was a kind of probably, it must have been about 1984. I remember going to the cinema at least twice on my own to go watch the breakdancing movie.
Okay.
So, which is kind of weird because I'm not really into hip hop now. It's not really my thing. But I do remember. I just think it was the sort of subculture of it that appealed to me. The sort of this like edgy street thing. So a little like kid from a like really really lower end of the scale northern suburbs in Joburg, which is the lower end of the wealthy suburbs, as opposed to the high end of the less desirable, I suppose. So I guess very very like middle class, but really there's like this New York City like beatboxer dancing on the street, edgy spray paint thing, like really like grabbed my attention.
I always find it interesting, how people got into film, all those films that really stuck with them, as a kid and stuff. And I think there's so many films that meant so much to me as a kid, where I always I've mentioned it before, but there's movies like Stand By Me or Goonies, because it not only influenced me as a director and actor, but also my childhood in just being with my friends and going on these crazy adventures and stuff like that. And it just meant so much. And I think if you were around a group of friends that also loved that movie, you would always kind of be in that headspace where you would be like, okay, cool, let's go on this adventure. Or, you say you're staying at mine, I'm saying I'm staying at yours, and we'd go on this like crazy adventure for the weekend or something like that. So I always thought it was a big part of your childhood. And then just earlier, me and Keegan we were watching some. I don't know if you are familiar with some of the 80s movies with like John Woo or like Golden Harvest with like Jackie Chan films. Because even looking back at those, when you look at the action sequences and shootout sequences compared to these like Marvel films or stuff like that, I know John Wick is amazing with the choreography of the the fighting with the guns and the martial arts, but looking at the like old school Hong Kong 80s cinema, it's so good. It's like so good with all the the shootout scenes, and there's like about 100 of them. Like 100 people all coming through all these different doors and corridors, and the choreography still with that is like. It's crazy, when you look at that and you see all these like explosions and flares and sparks, and that's like all in camera. Now it's like everything is just CG.
Yeah.
Everything is CG.
I was reading something about the original Top Gun and how they made that, and even then, like without the CG like that we have now, the CGI and the visual effects, and you're absolutely right. Like they really people did really push the boat out on making films. I mean, not that people don't try hard now, and they do, and they push things to kind of quite interesting limits, but we do have the luxury of visual effects, so much in camera, like in matte paintings and stuff like that. Mine was always I guess from about the age of 16, I moved to a kind of much more edgy area, and then there was a thing called the mini cinema that was like this independent, like the Labia in Cape Town, but much more rundown and crusty. And that I used to just go to, I feel like seeing a movie, cycle past, I feel like seeing a movie and go and see a movie. So I kind of saw a lot of weird things there, but it was often the music-driven things, and then kind of random stuff, But I wasn't, as a teenager, I'm so into films. I didn't think I was going to go into the film industry at all. I got into the industry because I was interested in music. I never played music, but I always loved music. Probably the film I saw the most times in the mini cinema was Led Zeppelin, The Song Remains the Same, or Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii. And they were just essentially live. Tapings,
That's why I go to Africa Burn and all those places.
I haven't been to Africa Burn, actually, Okay. Which loads of people are like, what? You're a perfect cat. I'm like, no, I haven't actually been. So I wanted to be a sound engineer, and through random coincidence, somebody said to me, blah, 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 met this guy, borrowed a map, please can you return it to him? Oh, by the way, he works at the sound studio. He said, maybe they're looking to take on a trainee. Yeah. And literally, I went to return this guy's map book and said, so I heard you might be looking for a trainee. And they were like, well, we haven't started interviewing yet, but yeah, cool. 90% chance you've got the job. We just need to clear it with the boss. So it was literally that. They wanted someone with no previous analog audio experience, because it was the first digital audio suite in South Africa. Okay. And I had the computer aptitude, which I'd proven. And so there I was, just started as a sort of trainee post-production audio guy. That was in 91 or 2.
Oh, shit.
And then an editor that I did a lot of work with, I'd mix the commercials that he had cut. And then he just came to me one day, Kobus Luertz, who was the really top editor in South Africa, in commercials. And Kobus was like, don't you want a job as my assistant? So I was immediately, I didn't even think about it. I was like, yes, I do actually, thanks. I'll take the job straight away. And so I moved to Cape Town to come, learn to edit from him and kind of.
Well, you've done amazing so far, man, and your work's always great. So yeah, congratulations with all the, the things that you're doing now. You've had a long journey, and you're doing some great stuff. But again, thank you so much for doing this, and well.
Hey, no problem. Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. It's really been fun and interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
Wow. Fishies!